You sat down to rest 2 hours ago. You haven't been resting. You've been lying on the couch with an open phone, scrolling without seeing anything, a faint heaviness in your chest that won't quite explain itself. You should be reading. You should be working. You should be doing one of the 8 productive things you reminded yourself about 3 minutes ago. You should be anywhere but here, doing this, which is technically what you wanted. And underneath all of it, there's a small, persistent feeling that you don't have a name for yet, but that has been with you for as long as you can remember. If you genuinely cannot rest without feeling guilty, if a free Saturday makes you anxious instead of relieved, if a vacation requires you to plan 4 projects to feel okay about taking it, if doing nothing feels like a moral failure rather than a basic human right, you are not lazy in disguise. You are not anxious in disguise. You are running a specific psychological trait that researchers have studied for decades, and it is rare enough and useful enough that the cost it extracts is worth understanding before you spend another decade paying it. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Most people experience rest as the natural absence of work. You stop, you recover, you start again. That sequence is supposed to feel neutral, even pleasant. It's how nervous systems are supposed to operate. Effort, recovery, effort, recovery. But for some people, that sequence breaks somewhere in childhood. Rest stops being neutral. It starts carrying a charge, and the charge it carries is guilt. This usually happens in one of 2 ways. Either you grew up in an environment where your worth was measured by output, and being still meant being worthless, or you grew up in an environment where rest was unsafe, where idle moments meant somebody else's chaos was about to land in your lap, where the only way to stay protected was to stay useful. Either way, your nervous system filed rest under threat. It learned that stopping had a cost, and once that wiring forms, it keeps running long after the original environment is gone. You can be 32, in your own quiet apartment, with nothing to do, and still feel the small pulse of an alarm that has no current source. In the 1970s, psychologists Maya Friedman and Ray Rosenman were studying what they called type A behavior, originally identified through cardiac research. What they found wasn't really about hostility or impatience, the parts that get pop-cultured. It was about a specific inability to rest. Type A individuals, they discovered, experienced relaxation as discomfort. Their bodies treated leisure as a form of low-grade alarm. More recent work by therapist Devon Price and psychologist Andy Kolber has expanded this into what's now sometimes called productivity guilt, or worth from output wiring. The research finds this pattern most often in eldest children, in kids of immigrants, in the children of struggling parents, and in anyone whose early environment quietly sent the message that you are valuable when you are useful, and that's the deal. What pop psychology is starting to call productive guilt is basically this: the trait of a nervous system that can no longer separate worth from doing. Picture this. It's a Sunday afternoon. You finished your work earlier than expected. The apartment is clean. You don't owe anyone anything for the next 18 hours. You sit down on the couch with a book. You read 4 sentences. You put the book down. You check your phone. You stand up. You walk to the kitchen. You don't actually want anything in the kitchen. You walk back. You sit down. You feel a small rising pressure in your chest, the kind that wants to be solved. So you find something, a shelf to organize, an email to send, a small optional task that doesn't actually need doing today. The pressure goes away the moment you start the task. That's the diagnostic. Rest didn't relax you. Doing relaxed you. And that is exactly what productive guilt is. But here's where it gets interesting. The same wiring that makes rest feel unsafe has built one of the most useful output capacities a person can have. People with productive guilt are unusually reliable. You finish what you start. You meet deadlines other people miss. You show up. You follow through. You are, quite simply, someone other people can count on, and there are not many of those left. Your bosses know it. Your friends know it. You have been the person who delivers since you were old enough to deliver anything at all. But there's more going on than just reliability. People who can't rest tend to develop unusual self-discipline. You don't need anyone supervising you to do hard things. You don't need external accountability. The supervision is internal, and it never sleeps. while other people are still negotiating with themselves about whether they really need to do the thing, you've already done the thing. Badly maybe, but done. That capacity for self-direction is rarer than most adults realize, because most adults outsource their motivation to deadlines, bosses, partners, or social pressure. You don't. And here's the kicker. Productive guilt produces a specific kind of competence under difficult conditions. When everything is hard, when you're tired, when you're sick, when you're heartbroken, you can still function. You've trained for years in the art of doing the thing anyway. That capability is genuinely useful, and it's why the people around you tend to call on you in a crisis. They know you'll keep going when most people would have already collapsed. And this shows up in ways you might not even notice. People with productive guilt are often the ones who make ambitious things actually happen. The book that gets written, the business that gets built, the skill that gets mastered. None of these things happen without a person willing to sit at the desk on the day they don't feel like sitting at the desk. Rest guilt, as ugly as it can feel from the inside, has put more work into the world than almost any other psychological trait. Now let's be honest, the cost is real, and it's real in a way most people underestimate. Productive guilt eats away at the very rest your body actually needs to keep producing the output you're using it to extract. Burnout, chronic fatigue, sleep problems, autoimmune flares, anxiety disorders, these are not unrelated outcomes. They are often the body sending a bill for the years of unrest. The trait that built the output is also the trait that, untreated, will eventually limit the output. That part is not pessimism. That part is just the math. But for the people who learn to keep the discipline and slowly let some of the guilt go, here's what you actually carry. You have an output capacity that most people will never touch. You have reliability, follow-through, internal motivation, and crisis-grade competence. None of these are minor. The work isn't to become someone who rests easily. The work is to slowly teach your nervous system that rest is not the threat it learned to think it was, that you are still valuable when you are still, that worth is not something you need to keep earning by the hour for the rest of your life. The discipline is the gift. The guilt was just the cost you didn't realize was being charged separately. There's something quietly remarkable about people who carry productive guilt. They have built lives, careers, families, and futures on the back of a wiring most people never had to develop. They have done the work nobody saw them do. They have shown up on the days nobody would have noticed if they hadn't. They have been steady in ways other people quietly relied on. And they have done all of this while carrying a small, persistent voice that has never quite let them sit down. If you have spent your life vaguely guilty about how rarely you can actually rest, this might be the moment to consider that the part of you that can't rest is also the part of you that has produced everything you've ever produced. It has cost you something. It has also built something. And the work going forward is not to silence it. It's to slowly, gently teach it that the work has already been done. You're not lazy. You're not anxious. You're someone with a rare trait that built most of what you've built, and that has been waiting for a long time to find out it was allowed to put the weight down. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to Silent Awareness. It genuinely helps the channel grow, and it lets you know when the next deep dive on the quietly different ways your mind works is ready. There's a lot more about you that nobody's named yet. Hit subscribe and the bell so you don't miss what comes next.